Alright, so for this video, I'm going to do a little bit more in-depth analysis of what I'm talking about. The last two videos, I kind of just talked about my personal experiences with certain groups of people, sharing a story about what happened to my friend and everything like that. But for this one in particular, I will be citing a couple of articles and whatnot that I'll be linking in the description to, add some context to some of the stuff that I'm saying now. I don't know what is and isn't true. I feel like pretty much everything you read on the internet should be taken with a grain of salt. But this will require a little bit more effort than just me telling a story, right? But I wanted to talk about the whole gooning epidemic that is allegedly going on and people's weird relationship with pornography because I've been listening to people, especially this recent incident that happened, this recent porn debate that I was in, where it seems like people have this weird contention with pornography in particular compared to any other vice. And the people, they frame it like, I keep saying people, but I gotta be brutally honest, it's a particular type of person. Nat sucks, if you will. Yes, we're back on that. We're back on National Socialism again, but it can be pretty much anybody, I guess. But I mainly hear from National Socialists on the internet. That's already kind of a warning sign that this is not a normal type of conversation. But they try to make these analogies and so forth, just claiming that it's worse than heroin, it's worse than crack. It's like the worst possible thing you could do to yourself is jerk off to pornography. It has all these weird psychological effects on you, right? And my whole thing is, I've been gooning for fucking 20 plus years now, like you would expect from fucking 14, 15-year-olds. Was I 14? I might have been like 13 or something when I started. I don't remember exactly when I started, but I'm a teenager. When I was a teenager, and you don't have a sexual outlet, like let's say you're in high school and you don't have a girlfriend or something like that, like oh my god, it eventually you're probably going to start looking at pornography because that is a natural thing that people want to have. Like your sex drive kicks in, everything, you start thinking about girls and stuff. That's the whole thing that happens when you come around that age. Now, that's not to say that porn usage in of itself is normal. Like this, the extravagant amount of adult content in of itself is normal, right? I'll talk about that more later as I go in, but yeah, it's you would think that I would have noticed something about like oh it lowers your testosterone, does all these other weird things. You think I would have noticed that, but and that's basically what people are arguing. They're arguing that it has all these insanely negative health effects on you. And what I want to talk about in this video is some of the claims that I've heard people say, my thoughts on them, and how I think a lot of this is actually just cope. Like, how do I put this? I come more from the okay. This is me, name dropping a couple of people. I'm gonna be name dropping a couple of YouTube channels and so forth because I said this is gonna be a little bit more in depth on the previous two videos. But I'm come from more of the Luke Smith mindset of you're not addicted to jack shit. You actually just don't want to take responsibility for your own actions. That's generally what I think is going on here. So where do I begin, or where do I stop rambling and really start to dig into the meat and potatoes of what I'm actually alluding to? So one of the first arguments I had back in the day with another content creator who, in hindsight, is a lot more sane and rational than the guy that I got through talking to. You may have heard of a similar story about a 400-pound fat ass who turned out to be just, off his rocker. Yeah, that was the guy I had argued with recently about pornography, ironically enough, but we'll get back to him in a minute. I want to talk about this first guy I talked to a while ago about the whole porn debate thing, because I was listening over to like some of the last conversation I had with him about it, just going over some of the points being made so I can go over it again in this video. And I'm not gonna just autistically go over every single detail of what was talked about, but to try to summarize it the best I can, the main argument that he was making was focusing on him specifically, not anyone else that was in that call either, because there was a lot of people talking about child sex trafficking, a whole bunch of other weird shit, just muddying the waters. And I was mainly focused on listening and not really like countering anything that he said, because I wanted to just figure out because this is still relatively new to me, this whole gooning bad, gooning kills you type of thing. So I want to actually know what people were saying, right? But people were trying to make arguments about how it affects children and all that kind of crap. That's going to become relevant later in the video as well. But what he was arguing with, the somewhat sensible guy was saying, was mainly about how it encourages voyeurism and objectifies women. I mean, he didn't say anything about dopamine, ironically enough. I feel like that's kind of overlooked a lot of times, but he didn't say anything about dopamine, but he did say, it reduces your testosterone, it makes you docile. Of course, we have to throw in the Jews, because he too was a National Socialist, so it's a plot by the Jews to make you docile and all that kind of crap. And I'm listening to this and I'm just thinking to myself, like where did you get any of that from? So let's start off with one of the most egregious claims that I heard was that the vast majority of pornography is revenge porn, because it's not only exploiting the user by exploiting their wallet, which that's like narrative strike number one, right? Actually, no. Before I even get into the whole sex trafficking thing, let's talk about the financial aspect of it, because so many people will talk about how porn is bad and like how if it's free, you're the product, right? Because it's so easily accessible. Why you would even bring up financial exploitation in that context is a little weird, because see, it's not like they just give you porn for free per se. It's like a lot of that stuff it's more of an issue of piracy, depending on what porn you're talking about. Because one of my problems with this conversation is that it's very ambiguous what people are even referring to when they talk about pornography. But yeah, because on one hand you have like OnlyFans models and stuff that have their content pirated all the fucking time. So yeah, it's free in the same sense that pretty much any video game is free. They can put in all the DRM that they want. You're still gonna pirate the game and play it for free. I mean, I heard that the Switch got cracked on day one, which is fucking hilarious to me. But yeah. So it exploits your wallet. That's assuming that anyone is actually paying for it, because a lot of the stuff, these crazy porn videos you see on like Pornhub and stuff, that stuff is free. There's TNA Flicks, fucking Spank Bang and shit. There's all these different websites that you can use. Various different qualities. X Videos, X Hamster. I know what they all are. Not all of them, because I'm not that much of a fucking gooner, but I know a good chunk of them when I see them. Right? And it's a way to get a lot of content for free, especially some paid content from your favorite online performers, your favorite models, your favorite porn stars, and have it pirated and just uploaded on the internet. This happens all the time. It's kind of like how on YouTube back in the day, a lot of the content that was on YouTube were just a bunch of pirated shows and movies, and like it's the same thing where it's like, here's content that I would have had to pay like $20 for, but somebody just uploaded her content on Spank Bang, so I could just watch it. Right? It's the same thing. So what I'm saying in that regard is, I don't think you can say in good faith that, I'm not really sure they're doing it for the money. I'm not saying that nobody pays for their porn, but I don't think I've ever met anyone in my life who actually has like a subscription to any OnlyFans account. And I'm saying that as someone who has actually spoken to OnlyFans girls on the internet before, not on purpose, not like I went on my way to talk to them. It's just that when you're online, whatever, you're in these Discord spaces, you meet quite the interesting group of people. And one such person was, I shit you not, a 450-pound black woman who just happened to have an OnlyFans page. And I will go into that in further detail later because I think that's a very interesting topic to go into as far as like what my stance on pornography is. But I just find it very interesting how you can talk to womans on the internet now or whatever. You'll just talk to a random woman and she'll just have an OnlyFans page or do some kind of like sexually related stuff, and it'll just be normal. And there's a reason for that. I'll go into that later on. I'll go into why I think that's the case. But anyway, so he talked about financial exploitation. He talked about that. He also talked about how like the vast majority of pornography on the internet is revenge porn. Of course, in true NatSoc fashion, there was no receipt to prove that this number is actually accurate. So I kind of just have to accept it in good faith. I'm not so much of a connoisseur in pornography that I would know something like that. I don't use websites like Pornhub, for example, because I think the vast majority of stuff on that website is actually just gross. There's no ethical reason for why I don't participate in it. It's just nasty. Like I think dick sucking is just gross. Hopefully this doesn't get demonetized. So I keep saying porn and dick sucking, but I am trying to have like a serious, make a serious point here. YouTube, please just let me cook, or just let me cook. But like holy fucking shit, right? So that's just kind of an unsubstantiated claim. I know that it's very Reddit chungus of me to ask, can you have a source for that? Do you have a source for that? Do you have a source for that? But like, what is the source for that? Because if you're telling me that these people are being recorded anonymously, we call those candids, right? First of all, most candids I've ever seen is literally just fat chicks walking around in public. Yeah, because that's also on porn sites too. Just people walking around in public and people goon to, watching these beautiful, majestic land whales walk around outside in public. So, like again, define porn, define candid. So are you saying that people are literally having sex on camera but don't know that they're being recorded on camera? So there's that, and then there's the assertion that they're all of these models are being coerced or blackmailed, or they were tricked into the industry. And they don't know, and not that they don't know, but you don't know that can't tell whether or not they're a victim or not, right? The forces that be, the powers that be, the Jews, the space toucans, they know how to hide the fact that they are exploiting women, and that these people are actually just being like sex trafficking victims or some shit. I apologize if this is a little stuttery, where it's a little late where I am right now as far as when I'm recording this, because I didn't have enough time to myself to actually get this one out, but I wanted to get it out in a timely manner. It's like, well, I guess I'll record it at fucking 2, 3 a.m. in the morning while no one is home, right? So I can actually just get the fuck out, right? So again, this is all just noise. This is all just whatever. Because without any evidence that any of these claims are true, I mean, I can't say it's false. It's unfalsifiable. It's like, yeah, maybe it happened, and you just aren't giving me the evidence that it happened. But for all I know, you're making it the fuck up, like seriously. Because, and this is what I want to talk about. There's a couple more arguments that he made that I want to cover before I go to the 400-pound fat ass dude and what he was saying, and what other people online have also said about pornography addiction, and what I think the actual issue is with these types of people. But one thing I really want to talk about that isn't really being talked about is that if you're talking about the whole gooning thing and good faith, the fact that you wouldn't bring up the issue of hypersexualization is very strange to me. Because one thing I've noticed, actually, having gone to public school, I don't know how many people have actually been to high school, been to middle school, right? But I was maybe not sexually assaulted, because that would imply that they like put their hands on me and stuff. But let's just say that there was one time where a whole bunch of girls, most of them were black if I remember correctly. Maybe only black women do that. That's because they were black. That's the problem. But these girls jumped me basically at my locker, making sexual remarks and stuff to me, trying to talking about sucking my dick and whatnot. And I know a lot of sub 5 males that might be their fantasy come true, having a whole bunch of women just jump them and sexually harass them. But for me, as a teenage boy, that was kind of out of pocket. You know, it's like, hold up. Despite the fact that I had already started gooning at that point, I somehow wasn't so gooned out of my brain that I thought that a bunch of women making sexual advances towards me was a good idea. Strange how that works. Strange how it didn't just completely change my psychology like that. But the point I'm trying to get to by bringing this up is I think that our culture, quote unquote, what that word even means anymore, I couldn't even tell you, has a problem with the normalization of hypersexualization. And what I mean by that is, if you look at these rap videos, fucking, what was it, Nicki Minaj, Cardi B, what was the fucking big trend that the Zoomers were talking about? Wet, yeah, WAP. Yeah, it was the WAP thing, the WAP meme that was a thing going around, right? And what ends up happening is that all these young girls, these young impressionable little girls, what do they have for role models, right? Because people always talk about male role models, but we only talk about female role models and how the hypersexualization of women in media can have this ongoing chain of effects where each new generation of women are being told from a very young age that they are nothing but sexual objects, and that their bodies are the only thing about them that are important. Now, I'm not one of those people that try to advocate for censorship or anything. I know I made a video about sexualization in media that people completely misunderstood the point of it, because I wasn't advocating that it's bad to goon to pretty anime girls. I'm just saying, like, you should maybe write your female characters as characters first and sex objects second. But people were so gooned out of their heads nowadays that they can't realize that was the point of the video was supposed to be. I actually have quite a few negative things to say about gooners, but that might be best suited for another video specifically about porn addicts and not the nature of porn addiction argumentation in of itself. But yeah, so what I'm saying here is, what makes you think that the reason why so many womans get into OnlyFans and such things, such shenanigans, there's nothing organic about that? Because I've talked to enough people, especially women that I've met on Discord, that they obviously have an affinity towards this type of shit. They do it willingly. They really just do it willingly. There's this one chick that I knew, another girl who did like adult content. One of the other guys in the server was fucking managing her OnlyFans page, for fuck's sake. She had her tits out, whatever, trying to get everybody's attention in the fucking call. And I'm just, ignoring that shit, just trying to ask her, basic questions about, what she's into, whatever, talking to her like a human being when she's sitting here trying to show herself off or some shit. Now, you can make up some Jewish conspiracy about how she was an industry plant or something, like, they just plant these women there. I don't know, man. I'm connecting the dots here. I'm looking at how hypersexualized women were in my school. Oh, that was another story too that happened to me when I was in high school. There was this one chick, this white girl, this little chubby white girl, blonde hair, blue eyes, the whole shebang. It was wintertime. She had tripped over, right? She had tripped over in her fucking winter jacket and everything because we were walking home from school. And can someone explain to me why this bitch had a thong? Right? Like, no, like no shit. Now, I don't know if your stories, if you're telling the truth, but Scouts honor, swear to God, she really did just fall on her big fat ass, and we saw her pants fall down, and she was wearing a thong. That's kind of what I'm talking about. Children, I mean, we'll say children, right? It's teenagers, because let's not contribute to the erasure of the teenager, because that is something that I think is a pretty damning concern. The constant infantilization of Zoomers and our generation. It's like, oh, you're 17, you're just a child, Though, I don't know, given the recent things that I've seen from people, things happen to people and so forth, there's an argument to be made and just in my own personal life, just like how I feel as a person in terms of maturity, I honestly feel like you aren't truly an adult until you're like 28. To be honest, I didn't feel like I started truly maturing as a person and start like undoing some of my bad habits until I was 28. And even in my fucking 30s, there's like still things I have to work on. But where was I going? Oh yeah, because you have to excuse me. Please, I have autism, right? Please be patient with me. I have autism. But yeah, so I get it. You know, you don't want to completely infantilize these people, these teenagers. But there's just something about how insanely fast these kids were growing up back in the day that it just feels really, I wouldn't, maybe not dishonest, but just like inconsiderate. I'm trying to think of the right word here. I don't want to ramble and wait too long. I have to try to finish this up, not fill the video with too much dead air. But yeah, you're not really seeing the full picture if you're not really considering just how hypersexualized the previous generation of kids were raised, and how the consequences of that. It's very short-sighted to not look at that and then be like, oh yeah, it's a Jewish cabal that's making everyone want to touch themselves and then record it on fucking yeah, like that one story my friend told me about this girl they met on Vindictus, and then she was a complete neat, really loved Synthetic Man for some reason. Interesting. Had a whole bunch of roaches in her fucking computer. It looked like, to the point where when she opened the computer case, it looked like a whole bunch of whoppers were coming out of it. Oh my god, that was hilarious that she had a story like that. I wonder why she was even streaming that. I think, how would you even know that? Why was she streaming that to anyone, right? But she had the fucking roaches and shit. But then one time she apparently just whipped it out and just started masturbating on camera. That's incredibly strange. And sounds to me like they're around the same age, so I'm assuming this woman was like 17, 19 or some shit. I'd have to ask, if I do get a chance to ever talk to my friend again, actually ask her how old this woman was, because that's just such an insane story to me. But I don't think that Jews had anything to do with that, or at least not in the same way that people try to make it sound, because you can say that, oh, Cardi B, Nicki Minaj, all these strippers, all these fucking these really questionable female role models are all part of a big Jewish scheme to ruin society. Oh my god. But no one really talks about how just the normalization of sex in of itself, I mean, we say normalization. How normal is it for our society to be this sexualized? So this is mainly stuff that became readily apparent during sex positivity movements and stuff. You pay attention to feminist riots and stuff to push for body positivity, sex positivity. My body, my choice. Blah blah blah. I don't know. There seems to be this underlying message that women can just throw their bodies around, and since women are women and men love women, and everybody likes a pretty girl, I think they do it because they can, and not necessarily because they were tricked into doing it. That kind of alleviates them of any personal responsibility, and that's a little disingenuous. I don't know. Doesn't really make sense because it doesn't match up with reality. It doesn't match up with observable reality. That's kind of why I was harping on my childhood and all this other kind of stuff, because it's things that like I don't see that. Like, it's, oh, she was such a sweet and innocent girl until a Jew walked up to her and blackmailed her, and that's how she got into the porn industry. No, like that's never how it happens. No, most of the stories that I've heard that actually know the story too, there are like some consistent themes, especially with certain types of porn, like especially like the big girl porn. Oh my god, like you're beating off to some bitch that's like 650 pounds or some shit, god forbid, like 800 something pounds. She likely has some type of mental disorder or some kind of trauma that led to her being as big as she is, and her doing porn was a way to cope and make money at the same time. it's not uncommon for these women to actually get into the porn industry for the sole purpose of making enough money to afford weight loss surgery. So that's the thing that happens as well. But now this coercion thing is not really required when people have been taught to believe that it's normal behavior in the first place, and they willfully want to do that type of shit to begin with. I'm not so sure about that, Chief. But one story I do remember does stick out to me. Two stories, actually. I'll talk about the more damning one first. This one girl that I used to really enjoy as a young lad, Chelsea Charms, my favorite veiny fake boob porn star. The tits that just constantly keep growing and growing. The fucking they're called propylene string implants. They're outlawed too. So she was like the only girl that ever was allowed to have breast implants like that. They were like perfectly spherical and veiny. Oh my god, like they're so fucking disgusting. It was amazing. It's so amazing that like every normal person I've ever taught, I haven't met a single other person in my entire fucking life that even remotely finds that woman attractive. So that should also tell you that, okay, hypersexualization can't be that fucking bad, because people have yet to be so desensitized that they think gigantic tits that are bigger than your torso are actually attractive. So at least there's that. Though I don't know, that fucking 400-pound fat ass did say that there's no such thing as tits that are too big. That's a really weird thing for a married man to say, but I'll get to him later. But yeah. So the thing about Chelsea is that when she finally retired, I remember one of the things she did on her OnlyFans was like upload these videos of her talking about her previous last set of videos that she did. I can't speak, Jesus. Okay, we're still doing it in one take, right? Like, as long as you understand what I'm saying, it doesn't have to. These videos are not supposed to be edited. Okay, fucking. I'm not trying to appeal to your ADHD. You're just gonna have to eat shit. But one thing that stuck out to me though is when she was talking about this one video that she was in, and she was just sitting down, like her breasts were filling her lap and everything. She was talking about how I'm talking about how big my boobs are again, but you already know that, right? Like, she sounded very disappointed, like disgusted even with her previous behavior, just bored, like she wasn't into it anymore. And she commented on just how huge those things were, but it wasn't in an erotic way like she would always do when she was playing her character, right? Because we also learned that her real name wasn't even Chelsea, right? When she not completely doxed herself, but she took off the stripper role and talking to her audience as a real person. The line that stuck out to me and lives in my head rent free was out of my goddamn mind. Like, that really stuck out to me, because what that said to me is, like, she looked at the size of her breasts and her booby greed, wanting her breasts to be as big as possible, as something that was like insane, basically. Like what the hell was I thinking, allowing myself to grow to that size? But you watch interviews of her on This Morning when they were in some British TV show. I don't know what the fuck it was. I only watched the fucking show one time for Chelsea, because Gooner. I'm gonna watch it for the good material. But yeah, when she's on the fucking interview talking to these people, it's like, oh, each one of your breasts weighs as much as 2 large watermelons. And, oh yeah, I do back exercises to help with my back, and I like the attention. And it's like they always tell you on these TV shows and shit that their health is fine and whatever, and I'm fine and I like the attention, and the reason allegedly for why Chelsea had retired in the first place was due to health issues. But do health issues, does that include mental too? Because, like, what the fuck? Out of my goddamn mind. Why would I ever do that to myself? Why did I ever think that was a good idea to allow myself to get that big? Why would I ever do that? And I'm noticing that pattern a lot too, where adult film stars will just show all this regret about what they did. But no one ever comes out and talks about their blackmailer or anything like that, or how they were coerced or tricked into something. It's more like the pattern that I'm noticing is that people get involved in this hyper sexualized society that we have constructed, um, or parts of it. It's not so bad that every normal person that you run into has a porn addiction. At least I hope they don't. They don't seem like they do. Most people seem like they're disgusted by most pornography. Even I'm disgusted by quite a large chunk of it. But they get involved in the adult entertainment industry. They have all these people that they meet, whatever, their friends or whatnot. They become part of that community. But they don't really fuck with it like that. So at some point they come out and just like, oh yeah, I was just capping the whole time. Um, and there's usually some underlying reason for that. I remember another. I guess I have two more I can tell. I'm trying to make it quick, but this one fat chick, Viola Valerie, I remember back in the day, she used to do porn, and then she just blamed her weight gain on fucking depression and shit, and basically said anybody that liked her content was a freak. When she started to do like whole weight loss things, just basically, oh by the way, if you goon to me, yeah, you're a creep. That's cool, right? Like, oh, big girls need love too. Fucking, beauty and each size. And by the way, if you actually like this, you're a creep. Interesting. But the last thing I'll talk about, the last girl I'll talk about, what I think is kind of interesting, because I want to, because her journey hasn't ended yet, so I'm curious to see how this story is going to end. It's this German chick, Bashine or whatever, yeah. And her tits also aren't real. They're like giant silicone implants, and she's like fake lips and a fake ass and everything. She even had a baby. She had like a whole like set where she was pregnant. And I'm just like, shit, bro. I didn't even know how to react to her. I wasn't even like, couldn't even go into it because I'm just thinking to myself like, holy shit, what is life gonna be like for that baby? Because even Chelsea was like, oh, I'll get rid of my tits if I ever decide to have kids. I mean, let's be honest. You're 50 years old. You got your breast reduction surgery. That's cool. But it's like, look, man. When I saw that interview, bro. Now on This Morning, when she was talking about, yeah, I'll get rid of the tits if it's time for me to have kids. If that time ever comes, that time was never gonna come. I'm sorry. Like, let's keep it real. Let's keep it a buck. If you're in the porn industry, the last thing you want is to have kids. The last thing a lot of women today want to do is have kids. Which is very interesting that no one seems to want to talk about that little phenomenon, how nobody wants to have kids. Or it's mainly the men that want to have kids. Like 30-something%, or I'm trying to remember the quote from the Gerber Johnson video that released recently. But basically, Gerber was talking about how like only 30-something% of women actually want to have kids, or 30-40%. Well, it's like 60% of men. Like, it's mainly the men that want to have kids. The women don't want to have kids anymore. Interesting. But she had her baby. Bashine had her little baby or whatever. So now the set's she's not pregnant anymore. Even though she still has the giant tits. So hopefully that kid's life isn't going to be too rough. I just feel like if your mom has freakishly large bimbo titties, I don't know, the other kids at school are going to talk about that. It's, hey, is that porn your mom just saw on the internet? Like, that's going to be rough. I think that's going to be rough for that kid, bro. But what stuck out to me about her, though, is like, I read about her bio or something. She had like a degree in, what was it, chemical engineering or something? She had a degree in something related to engineering just to do porn anyway. I'm trying to make this a little bit comedic. I know, like, you're like telling these stupid ass stories, but I'm telling this story for a reason, to add some context, because people don't seem to realize that easy money, hypersexualization, the normalization of sexual behavior, these are far more plausible reasons for why women do pornography than Jewish coercion or revenge porn or something. I mean, that could still technically happen. That could still technically be true. Maybe all of it really is filmed without their knowledge. Maybe they don't know that they're being filmed like that. Maybe it's some kind of system where these evil ex-boyfriends torture their ex-wives or ex-girlfriends or whatever the fuck. Because revenge porn, like that's so vague. Like, what do you mean? What do you even mean by that? And considering that you're not even able to look up revenge porn on Pornhub, like if you type revenge porn, it refuses to give you any feedback on it. You know, it's considered an inappropriate search, even on Pornhub. Again, so how would you know? How would you know that if these websites are even themselves are trying to stop you from being able to access revenge porn? That majority of it is revenge porn. On what website? Where did you get that from? It's an unsubstantiated statement, which is very interesting. Very interesting, you know. But is there anything else I want to say about that in particular? Yeah, this video is probably going to be way longer than the other ones because there's a lot of stuff for me to talk about regarding porn and addiction and stuff like that. There's even going to be moments where I have to pause the game and read some stuff, so I might have to actually cut this into 2 parts because I'm expecting family home within the next like couple of minutes, so they're probably going to walk in while I'm in the middle of recording. I'm just going to have to eat shit and do something about it then. But I think that's it about that particular talking point. Yeah, because I think if I rambled any further, I'll just be repeating myself, so I'm just going to move on from that. Another thing he brought up was, oh yeah, the porn makes you docile. It makes you docile, and you know, it lowers your testosterone, all that other good shit. Okay, so let's talk about things that make you docile. This should be pretty quick because this is kind of self-explanatory. Pretty much anything that's a coat makes you docile, so to speak. Anything that's a creature comfort is bad for you in that context. I'm not really understanding what is particularly special about porn compared to any other coat, because if that's if being comfortable with your shitty situation is part of like that's the reason why you have a problem with pornography, you'd also have a problem with video games too. And people tend not to be fully honest about. I'm yawning. That's how you know it's actually late where I live right now. That's not like you wouldn't be playing video games either, or watching movies or doing of this goofy shit that people waste time with if you actually cared about, you know, doing something with your time. Because what I find very interesting, oh, you're being docile, it's going to make you docile for, and okay, well, if you weren't docile, you weren't being placated by pornography, what would you even do with all of that unbridled energy? What would you even use it for? The fat ass motherfucker that I'm going to start ripping on, and you fucking whatever 10-20 minutes to get through the rest of these arguments that I've heard. If he's anything to go by, you're going to use that energy for literally fucking nothing, right? Because, yeah, I'll talk about one of the things he talked about. One of the things that fat ass told me was that, you know, fucking, you know, testosterone helps you with weight loss and all these type of things. And I told him because he had already, you know, insulted my friend and shit and was getting loud with me for no fucking reason. So I just straight up, you know, started making fun of him for that shit. Because it's like, how are you going to sit up here and be 412 pounds and tell me that, oh yeah, you know, if you stop gooning, it will give you the energy to actually work out, and it helps with losing weight and all this other kind of shit. But if you're 412 pounds, it doesn't matter that you're fucking 6'4". That's a cap. You're not 6'4" and 412 pounds of muscle. You're just obese. Obviously, you have a problem with food. Like, you can't sit up here and talk to me about porn addiction when you just replaced your porn addiction with food. I don't need to see what your diet looks like to know that you eat way too fucking much if you are that big. And there are likely, you know, psychological reasons behind it. There's this notion I've not notion, that's the wrong word. See, I get very autistic when I'm sleepy, okay? I should be playing Mr. Sleepy Man instead of fucking Tekken just to emphasize the point that I'm half awake doing this shit. But, yeah, I'm noticing a pattern where it's like only losers seem to have this problem with fucking pornography addiction. Like, real talk. It's someone who's mentally ill. You know, like a lot of synth have that problem. The cat dude, what was his name? Husky? Yeah, that guy. He also has fucking problems with pornography, and he'll tell people, oh, you should quit your pornography addiction because you die early. It leads to you dying early. And I remember I asked him, you have a source for that? And his reaction was just block everyone who's questioning him. But you know, he's also the guy who calls women bitches and shit. The guy who's a raging misogynist just also happens to be the same guy who's like so viciously anti-porn. And it's interesting. A lot of it just feels like virtue signaling from people who want to alleviate themselves of any personal responsibility, any personal accountability for their own actions. And as I've learned recently, people hate the word accountability. They hate it so much that they'll drag one of your friends into the shadow realm, never to be seen or heard from again, for daring to insinuate that maybe it wasn't a Jew, maybe it's your own fucking fault that you doing your heart out to the point that you're fucking 412 pounds. That's actually your fault. What else did I hear that other guy say? The not morbidly obese guy say? Blah blah. Sex trafficking. I mean, the sex trafficking thing. This might as well be in the same thing as revenge porn. I don't know. I don't know if there's any point even going over that. See, part of the reason why I don't like get into these big heated debates about pornography addiction and stuff when people talk about why we should outlaw porn is because if you're just going to make a whole bunch of unsubstantiated claims and you're not going to provide any evidence for any of it, why should I even react? Like you basically said nothing, because I can't just take your word for it. You haven't explained any of it. Like, you haven't explained what makes any of it true. And it just gets sillier and sillier and sillier when you start making more and more brazen statements that don't seem to coincide with reality. Because like I was explaining earlier, it really does just seem like the actual issue is that, people just get people just like sex. I don't know what to tell you. Like, we like sex. We have all these celebrities that we worship that are all about sex. People just seem to like sex, and then they make it a big part of their personality. And I do think there are problems with that, especially considering how many young girls find themselves just mistakenly, just magically falling into the porn industry, just magically having these obsessions with having the biggest boobs in the world and all this kind of crap, body dysmorphia and all this kind of stuff. But I think if that wasn't the case, like if the normalization of hypersexuality played no part in the growth of the porn industry and women's behavior and all that kind of stuff, if that did not matter at all, I don't think you would have all these pride parades and sex positive movements and so forth that are literally about this. They're literally about parading, their sexuality and shit. That wouldn't be happening because no one would be thinking about it unless they were just introduced to pornography and it magically brainwashed them into doing it. Or maybe the only reason why there's been pride parades and shit is because they watched pornography and that made them gay, because what that fat guy told me is that porn makes you gay. Porn just changes your sexual preferences somehow, right? Hold on, I just gotta sneeze real quick. False alarm. Jesus Christ. No, I'm not gonna re-record the video. Just gonna have to eat shit. But yeah. No, that makes no sense. It just makes no sense. I'm still trying to resist the urge to just laugh because this shit is so fucking goofy. But I guess I'll talk about a little bit about the whole porn makes you gay thing, because that kind of ties to another thing the other guy told me about how you watch porn, you need to get like a bigger hit, like a bigger and bigger hit each time. And that's how you start looking at more and more degenerate stuff. That doesn't really account for personal preference or taste. It really does not. Okay, so let me try to explain something here, right? You do understand that your sexual preferences are genetic, right? Like, we're in understanding of that, right? Because people want to talk about how it's not normal to be gay and like all these different psychological factors play into being gay. I can provide a study for this too. I should link this in the description of the video. But when I was doing research on the topic, I discovered this article that was talking about how a lot of people who are LGBTQ plus or whatever just also happen to be autistic, showing that it really is like a mental type of thing. I don't maybe not say mental issue because you're saying it's bad to be gay. I mean, not necessarily. I mean, like if you want to fuck men up the ass, that's up to you. I mean, it's not like you're fucking me in the ass, right? If it's two consenting adults and they're having booty sex, yeah, it's gross because I'm not gay, so I think it's gross. But it's whatever. I mean, I think even like anal sex between a man and a woman is gross because I think anal sex is gross. Who would have thought? Who says stick it? Oh, I'm gonna stick it in the pooper. That's actually just gross. But this idea that you will become so desensitized to the shit that you are used to jacking off to, that you will then proceed to jerk off to what CP or any kind of weird shit like just the addiction, it doesn't stop. I just keep gooning, and then eventually I will start gooning to 650-pound land whales because no. Now, this may be a little embarrassing to admit, but I didn't exactly start making these types of videos and making this channel to hide a whole bunch of stuff about myself. It's almost like I made this channel with the express purpose of expressing myself. Oh my god. But one of the things I used to do when I was like 4 or 5 years old or something was and this might I'm trying to make it sound more cringe than it is, but it is cringe, but I don't care. I used to stuff like balls and shit underneath my shirt. Just the okay. Yeah, okay, I guess now that I actually said it sounds goofy. Let me try to explain it, right? So what I would do when I was this kid, I might have even been like 3. I don't think I was like 5. I might have been like 3. I would go under the fucking dining room table and take my fucking like Space Jam ball, wherever the fuck. I'd put like the ball underneath my shirt or whatever, and it'd like, oh, like I have like big tits and a pregnant belly or some shit. I don't know why I would do it. I don't know why I would do that. I would just later in life just coincidentally have a fucking fetish for abnormally large women. That would just that would just coincidentally happen. But I guess what I'm trying to say is that usually the warning signs of certain behaviors can be seen in early age, and it's not like I was exploring to pornography at 3 fucking years old. I know that for a fact. So that didn't happen. You might just be autistic. You might just be a fucking weird fucking freak of nature. That might actually be the reason that you are do that type of shit, and then the whole fat chick thing, I know that had nothing to do with pornography or any type of cartoon exposure, because fucking everything in the sun is telling you that those types of women are unattractive. So why would you be attracted to that type of thing if you if it's all psychological, if it's all brainwashing, and why would it have the opposite effect on you? That doesn't make any sense. And this is all in light of studies that have been done that show that things like even your political opinions, like your personality, is in fact genetic. So if your personality is genetic, can your sexual preferences also be genetic? Oh, no. See, the reason why I jerk off the Fuda, reason why our Lord Simpler jerks off the food is because porn makes you gay. Yeah, the porn made him do it. Yeah, it's the porn that made him gay. And when I try to tell people, it's like, look, pornography could, desensitize you to certain things and make you more susceptible, more, maybe not susceptible, but more equable to certain behaviors. Like, oh, this is perfectly normal. Yeah, I think I will go into the fucking 8-foot long Fuda cock porn. Yeah, I think I will get into like anaconda shit. If you something that you might not have done if you didn't have it, normalized to you through constant exposure and being desensitized and all that kind of shit, that wouldn't have happened. I've argued that with people before too, especially with furries. I'm just saying, like, okay, I'm not saying you're gonna fuck animals, but if you get in these echo chambers, these fetish echo chambers, you're eventually gonna get to a point where you might think it's okay to fuck animals because nobody stopped you to tell you that was fucking weird. But the baseline requirement, like the required amount of autism for you to even think that was hot in the first place, has to start from you. It's an interesting study as well that I read. I was looking at comparisons for like game addiction and stuff like that. It showed that people, children who had impairments in like the parts of their brain related to decision making, were far more likely to form a game addiction than people that did not have that. So certain types of people are more susceptible to addiction than others, is basically the point being made there. So certain people with certain type of personality traits, and their sexual preferences, they might be more susceptible to having a food porn addiction than others. Maybe kids that fucking stuff balloons and shit under their shirt when they're fucking 5 might be more likely. Maybe that's a sign that they might have fucking lactation fetish porn shit. They might be into that when they are older, because that stuff is genetic. The Jewish conspiracy angle takes away a lot of personal accountability on part of the person with the sexual preference in that regard, and it's kind of cringe. It kind of reminds me again of something Luke Smith said in his videos about resisting temptation. That these people, they talk about humans, like that they're just a bunch of chemical reactions, and that we can't take any ownership or control over ourselves. One thing too I want to talk about as well. I've talked about like not early porn exposure. They talk about it. That's what they call. The Nat sucks call. You're being, if you're exposed to porn early, you form this addiction. Like you're not coping. You're being addicted. That's a cope in itself. That statement is a fucking cope, and I will address that particular statement as well. But because it's fucking retarded. But as far as the whole early porn exposure thing, this is why I feel like it's important to clarify what porn even means in this context. In this context, because I'll think of stuff like Totally Spies, or fucking what was that, Mega Butt, the girl that inflates her butt and hits people with it from all that. Like, is that CP? Is that early porn exposure to people? Because it does expose fetish content to minors as a joke, right? The fucking Passion Patties episode. I mean, a lot of kids saw that and thought, oh, hey, did that awaken something inside of them? I mean, it was likely already there. You were likely already going to be attracted to that stuff. Let's be real. But, if you didn't see that episode, I mean, I don't know. Like, did the fucking, this episode of this TV show made me gay, and this made me do this and that, because, it can never just be me. This idea that people get involved in the pornographies of these cartoons and shit, especially as teenagers, when teenagers willfully look for that type of shit and think it's cool because you're a teenager and you want to have sex because your hormones are kicking in, and you're supposed to be meeting these milestones, your first kiss, your first date. This is supposed to happen when you're like fucking 16, not 30, not in your fucking 30s. That's weird. That's why everybody has stunted growth, because you're not even allowed to be an adult anymore. Yeah, I don't know about that, Chief. That, because the reason why I'm bringing that up, I apologize. This is really rambly and difficult for people to listen to. But the reason why I'm bringing that up is because we've heard this song and dance before. Think of the children. Think of the children. It objectifies women. It's so bad. It's so bad. This is the same thing that leftists talk about when they, talk about how we need to censor your art. It has all these negative effects on women's self-image. Remember, back when Gamergate was happening, and the big conversation was how sexual depictions of women hurt women's like self-image and makes them what more likely to get risky breast enlargement surgeries. Like, I'm not gonna be a dick and be like, oh, how does that affect you? How's that my problem? But like, how does that even make any sense? How is it my responsibility to make you feel good about yourself and not want to like put commit surgeries and stuff on yourself? Like, no. We all know, or maybe we don't know, but those of us who are Chad and red pilled know that a lot of women, they do this shit for the status. Okay, like they get giant breast implants and shit for the attention and the status, because men like titties and women know that men like titties. So if I have titties, then men will like me. That's not that's not such a goofy concept to understand, So when talking about like Spaz Kid cartoons and how like, oh yeah, Smash Girl made me into a gooner. Oh my god, it ruined my dopamine receptors. Oh wait, because they don't talk about dopamine receptors, because you talked about dopamine, you actually have to criticize video games, and a lot of people don't want to criticize video games, even though video games are bad for you in the same way. But oh no, it ruins relationships, it ruins families. It's terrible. It's terrible. Oh, my gooning addiction, I can't control it. We need to outlaw porn. We need to ban porn. We need to ban it, because that's ultimately where this this stuff goes down to. They're talking about banning pornography. But if you're going to ban pornography, what else are you wanting to ban? Like, you can't convince me that it stops at porn. Like, let's keep it real. It's not going to just stop at banning porn. It's going to keep going into like just banning whatever people consider to be offensive. Like, this is the same shit. It's book burning shit all over again. And I mean, if the Jewish conspiracies or anything to go by, these people are in favor of banning books or burning books, because the Jews wrote all these books about transsexuality, and we have to burn it because it's bad. It's info hazards and it's bad and shit. And look, maybe freedom of speech isn't the coolest thing ever, but you can't sit up here and talk to me about the freedom to do I'm with the freedom to do this and that, and smoking is cool and bass and cool because it enhances your voice and it makes you sound cool, or whatever fucking stupid baby shit people want to use to argue because they don't actually want to have a serious conversation about the topic. The reality of the matter is, censorship by any other name, it's still censorship. Like, you're still are advocating for censorship, because the argument basically boils down to, since people cannot be trusted to take accountability for their own actions, we have to take accountability for them and ban this material that people choose to engage with because they simply don't have it in them. The addiction is just too strong, it's too great that they can't make the decision on their own to not engage with the content. So I have to get rid of the content for you. It's literally banning steak because a baby can't chew. Because my whole thing is, I've never met anybody who has an actual fucking addiction, at least not until recently, I guess. I don't know anybody in my circle of friends who watches pornography who would have an addiction. I guess it depends on what do you mean by addiction, right? Because I have a linked article here as well about like the side effects of porn withdrawal. Only thing I've read in there is like maybe like aches and pains that might be related to actual like physical ailments related to porn withdrawal, right? Maybe like stomach pains and stuff like that, which is, I guess, like a typical addiction reaction. I mean, you can get stomach aches and shit just from having an anxiety attack. But okay, so I'm gonna take a page out of Luke's book, right, out of our Lord and Savior Luke Smith. If you have a porn addiction, how about we lock you in a room for 14 days and you have a whole bunch of people like stare at you, right? Lock you in a room for 14 days, have you monitored, and see how long it takes for you to uncontrollably whip out your dick and start cranking it. Because when he explained it like that, it just sounds like a cope. You're not addicted. You have a bad habit, sure. Like, it's not that it's probably something you shouldn't be doing. But it's something you could, choose not to do if you chose not to do it, but you want to give all your control away to a Jew and not actually, you know, make your own decisions because, you want a Fuhrer to come in and play daddy and, be your daddy and do everything for you is what you actually want to do. It reminds me of what this one guy I would argue with all the time. What was his name? George the Gunwalker, fucking a synth clipper or something. Yeah, George the Gunwalker, that was his name. Yeah, I remember he talked too about how porn is bad. He thought porn was bad too, but then it was revealed that he would jerk off to like hyper fucking fetish tit porn of this character. What was it, Casey from this artist? They call him Cake. Yeah, this weird blonde chick with giant tits and a detachable head. And when I called him out on that shit, and it's like, if porn is so fucking bad, if you think porn is so fucking bad, why are you looking at this shit? And you know what this guy told me? It's like, well, it's an addiction. That's why it's an addiction. I can't control. It's an addiction. It's an addiction. So you've already kind of like mentally submitted yourself. You've submitted defeat already. You're telling me that I have this addiction, I can't control it. Yeah, and if you refuse to take accountability for it, you're just going to keep doing it. You shouldn't even know what that character even is. If you were truly based in chud pilled, you wouldn't even know who that artist is. Because, a lot of fetish artists, I can tell you from experience, being part of the fucking size community, that a lot of those people were leftists, It's very uncommon for them to be conservative, though. Conservative leftist. That's basically the same thing, as far as I'm concerned. That's one conspiracy theory I believe wholeheartedly is the fucking uniparty theory. I don't believe that there's any genuine opposition between any of these factors, but that's kind of or any of these factions rather. But that's a conversation for another video. But there's way too many people I've noticed that, on both sides, the left and the right, you listen to these extreme ends of the bell curve, and they say the same shit, but they use different reasoning. Like the right wants to ban porn because it fries your brain and ruins your relationships, and we need to stop the porn, and it hurts women. And the left wants to censor porn because it hurts women. It's always the women and the children. It just reminds me of the articles we used to read back in the day about how video games would cause violence. You remember any of that stuff? I remember this one article. I might be able to find it. I'll try to link some stuff related to video game addiction and video game violence. But basically, it was something about how, since like, what was it, a cortisol spike or some stupid shit, since this one chemical in the brain is heightened after playing a violent action game, and that's proof that it makes you more aggressive, even though like having a reaction, being excited over some shit that happened in a video game does not illicitly mean like I'm gonna go out and shoot up a school. That those things don't coincide with one another. It makes no sense. But that's kind of the same logic with the whole porn makes you gay, porn reduces your testosterone. Because one thing the fat dude, the 400-pound fat ass, told me is he didn't link the study. Of course he didn't link it, because why would he link the study to me? Why would he actually try to support his point with evidence? That would be gay, right? But he did tell me that the study that he found showed that it temporarily decreases your testosterone levels, and that if you do not stop gooning, then your testosterone levels will never, increase back to normal levels. But see, that brings up a whole bunch of questions, like how much gooning do you need to do before your testosterone levels, what speed do your testosterone levels increase again? Do they just decrease and it's like, okay, it takes like 5 hours for them to go back to normal, 10 hours? How many times a day am I allowed to goon? That doesn't make any sense, right? So, like, what the fuck? Hold on, I might have to sneeze again. Okay, that time I sneezed for real, so that time it was justified. But yeah, man, that's oof. It's the same shit, right? Oh, your testosterone levels are dropping, so we have to ban the pornography. oh, your cortisol levels are spiking. We need to ban the violent video games, or whatever the fuck the stress hormone was that they were talking about. I'm pretty sure it's not cortisol. I just forgot what it was, but all that matters is you get the general gist of what I'm talking about. I guess what I'm trying to say is that a temporary decrease in testosterone without any statistics for how much testosterone you are losing or any kind of negative health effects for having a lack of testosterone, because I've yet to read an actual article about how testosterone, how porn affects your testosterone levels and the negative consequences of that. In fact, I will link this study as well. I read this article today doing research for this video, saying that a lot of these studies about how it affects your testosterone levels negatively are a myth, and that a lot of the stuff that people are saying is bad about pornography isn't even true. And not only that, but I mean, if we're being honest, I mean, couldn't you say the same thing about just masturbation, just without pornography? I remember the other guy I was talking to, the first guy, the sensible, somewhat sensible guy, was talking about how, masturbation's okay. Is this the porn that's bad, because the porn has all these negative effects on your brain and shit. But constant cooming, like if you coom all the time, wouldn't you have the same negative effects? Or are you just saying that you're not going to coom as much as you would if you had access to pornography? Because most of the time, I don't even use porn. I just use my imagination. I didn't have access to the internet like that until I was like 15. So I didn't even have access to pornography. It was around whatever time Jackass 2 came out. I have to look at the date that movie came out. But that was the movie that that's what inspired me, so to speak, to even really start looking at porn. And that's not even going into things like anime, whether or not anime counts as porn. Fucking Jungle DQ or fucking Go Danner and all this other softcore fan service anime that's a gateway to hentai that appeals to horny teenagers, because that's what teenagers want to see. I remember one of the things he talked about watching back in the day was High School DxD. That's basically just porn for teenagers or children, since teenagers are children, right? So what the fuck? I mean, you should have a problem with all of that if you actually genuinely care about this topic, and you're not just memeing to stir shit. You're not just entering Discord servers to shut down porn channels and shit because you think it's funny. Assuming you're not doing that, you would care about all those types of things. Like, it's just bad, period. You would think people would say that. You would think, right? But no, that's not what happens. That's not typically what happens. What happens is that these people complain about pornography and how bad it is for you. And it turns out they use it themselves. There was some rumor going around this guy even fucking is in the piss porn, but I don't have any evidence of that. Something about kiwi farms and water sports. I don't know about that, Chief. I wouldn't go around accusing someone of being into water sports unless I had evidence of it. But the fact that rumor was allegedly going around, that's incredibly strange. That's incredibly strange. It would explain a lot, though. I mean, like, if you're into fucking piss porn and all your anti-porn stance is just a bunch of projection, that would explain a lot. What's another thing I need to bring up? Oh, yeah, so I already talked about how the porn makes you gay thing doesn't make any sense, because, if you're gay, it's likely due to your autism and brain structure, not just being brainwashed. What was another thing? I'm trying to think. Give me a minute. I'm going to sit up for a bit. Trying not to have so much dinner. I might be coming to the end of the video. I think I only need like 15 more minutes here. I might even have that. They should be walking through the door any minute now. I guess I'll talk about one of these, some of these conspiracy theories too that they talked about. Oh yeah, there was this one. This one was really hilarious because I actually have an. I know Reddit is so bad. Reddit chung is Reddit bad, but there was this Reddit thread I was reading. When I was researching this about a whole bunch of people sharing stories about how they found porn in the woods, because what the big fat guy was telling me was that the Jews put out porn Playboy magazines for children to find in the woods to like brainwash them to fry their brains, that the porn would just fry their brains, and they left it out there in the woods for them to just find and corrupt their minds, corrupt their innocent little minds with the pornography. And I was reading this Reddit thread of people who were like going over their stories, their experiences with finding porn in the woods. I'm just like, holy shit, was it true? And I'm just reading them, and they're just like, oh yeah, I was like the coolest kid at school, giving away Playboy magazines. They thought it was awesome. And it's like, yeah, porn is awesome because we're horny teenagers and we want to see titty, right? I mean, what the fuck? And what I found interesting is that when people started talking about explanations for why the stuff was in the woods, they brought up, yeah, it was likely left behind by like people who were like partying and shit. And sometimes I would find condoms and shit in the woods too. And they were talking about finding it behind dumpsters and like, train stations and shit like that. So it sounds like what's actually happening is some guys would get drunk in the woods and leave their porn magazines behind, which is a lot more plausible than a Jewish conspiracy theory to corrupt children by just having, leaving porn in the woods specifically for them to find. I mean, I don't know. He says that this is a well-known myth. There's no citation proving that this actually happened, but this is totally legit. Like people have totally talked about this before, which is why this is the first time I ever heard of it happening. Just like there've been plenty of UFO sightings. Spider-Man's real. I read Spider-Man issue 1. Obviously, Spider-Man actually exists, or else they wouldn't have written that book. Obviously, he's real. Nobody. You might just be making shit up. You might just be coping. Because again, like I said earlier, a lot of people use this porn cope thing to not take responsibility for their own actions, which is very weird. And if porn has such a negative effect on your brain, why would you want me to show you an image of this chick with gigantic titties in the first fucking place when you're married? That just seems really weird. And there's no such thing as boobs that are too big. That's also feels like a gooner response. Are you also a proud member of the size community? I mean, that would explain being fucking 412 pounds. That would explain it. That would explain it if you're also a proud member of the fucking size community doing that type of shit. This is why I tell people, like, you can't just pay attention to what people say. You gotta pay attention to what people do. You gotta pay extra attention to who says it, who is the person saying this. If I notice a pattern where obese losers and porn addicted, terminally online faggots are the people who start saying this type of shit. Okay, maybe using the F word, I might get in trouble for that one. But I've said in other videos, I should be okay. I should be okay. But like no. Like actually, no. You might just be coping. You might just be crazy. I don't know. Let me see. What else can I think of? I haven't talked about. There's so much junk these people talk about. Are there any articles that I had open that I specifically wanted to quote? Let me see. I talked about the porn withdrawals, the brain scans. Oh, I mean, this isn't really important, but there's a little tidbit to be said about microplastics could also have showed to possibly reduce your testosterone levels. So if you care about lowering your testosterone that fucking much, you should also not drink out of plastic bottles. That's another thing you should be doing, is using plastic. Yeah, because, microplastic's bad. I mean, you don't know if you have microplastics in you or not. You're just being told you have microplastics in you. Just like you've been told that your testosterone levels drop when masturbating, but, you never get any substantial proof of that. that might be it. Okay, I'm gonna give myself 10 more minutes here. So, in conclusion, because a lot of this stuff is difficult to talk about because it's very inconclusive, very indecisive, no definitive proof or anything. I will debate anybody on this if they want to actually debate me on the fucking porn debate thing. I'll actually talk about it because the last few times I've talked about it, I've never had like legit just debates about it. It's usually some schizophrenic talking to me about no, they're using porn to destroy my people, by nationalism, my people. The people who are not going to reproduce, who are very likely not going to reproduce, talking about porn addiction is the goofiest shit to me. You talk about saving your seed as if you are ever going to put it inside of a woman. It is the goofiest shit. If you're not going to do anything but just rot at home anyway, you could at least just release. Oh, that's another story. Okay, I'm not gonna name any names here. This is kind of embarrassing. But I know this one guy was talking to me about porn addiction and stuff, how he overcame his porn addiction. But then he also talked about like cooming in his sleep, and it's natural. It's the body's natural way of expelling the seed. It's natural. I'm just like, dude, I've never had a wet dream in my entire fucking life, and maybe it's because I don't, I don't retain my seed until I fucking explode from literally having blue balls. But oh man, imagine being so terrified of your own sexuality, having such an unhealthy relationship with gooning, that instead of just, at least just masturbating, you don't have to use porn, just masturbating without pornography, you just allow yourself to fill with balls, or fill your ball, to fill your balls with sperm, and until you just coom in your sheets in your sleep. And the reason why is because it's against my religion to goon and all this other type of shit. It's mad tough. But I guess one of the last things I'll talk about is this whole early porn addiction thing and the nature of addiction. I didn't want to talk about addiction of itself. Most studies I've read about addiction seem to indicate that it's a multitude of factors, environmental factors, and genetic factors as well that make certain types of people more susceptible to addictive personality, addictive qualities than others. That's why they say there's just a thing of having an addictive personality, so to speak, right? Excuse me, when I talk too much, my body seems to has an allergic reaction. It tells me to shut the hell up. It's because my nose is full of mucus right now. But anyway, what the fat guy told me that was just really crazy to me is that people don't use porn to cope. They use it they're using it because they're addicted. They can't control it. They're addicted. They're addicted, and that's the goofiest shit to me because it's like, people get addicted to copes, right? Like that's how coping actually works. That's how coping becomes addictive. You get the nice dopamine spike. You have this nice little substitute for actually being in a real relationship with a person. You get attached to this kind of crap because you don't have a good, healthy alternative to doing it. So you replace it with a cope, and the cope becomes addictive. It really doesn't make sense to try to argue that you can't be addicted to copes. It's again the way it's being worded. It's yet another excuse to say that I'm addicted. That's why I can't stop looking at porn, is because I'm addicted. It's like you're addicted to the cope. And it kind of reminds me too about this YouTuber I used to watch before he got ran off of YouTube. Turfling Monkey. I don't agree with everything the guy says, but I do think he has some pretty interesting stuff as far as not giving a shit about what other people think of you. But one thing in particular about TFM that I think is really sad, that looking in retrospect, because I understand that he has his life story with relationship with his mom and being falsely accused of rape and other things that would lead him down the pathway that he took. But one thing I've noticed is remember to get your doll from the dollhouse, and fucking talking about AI chatbots, and you talk to this little AI chatbot, so you have your little sex doll, and when we have AI, you can pretend like it's a real person. These people are obviously using porn as a substitute for real human connection. So that sounds a lot less like addiction and more like coping in the worst possible way. Kind of like how people get on these Discord apps and shit and form parasocial relationships online to compensate for the fact that they can't form these relationships IRL. I think a lot of people who get involved in pornography really do it as a cope for not having a partner, not having a sexual outlet. Like, think about it, right? When you do like a sexy role play or whatever, like whatever NTR role play with people on Discord, usually another man. Do you really need to fake intimacy to get your rocks off? Wouldn't you want to just watch people have sex? Why does the porn need to have a story if you're not compensating for something much deeper than that? The human connection. This whole dollhouse robot shit. It wouldn't matter if it was all about purely lust. I think we especially men's sexuality. Not to say that these videos are only meant for men. In fact, you could say that these videos are being made with a particular woman in mind. You could say that these videos only exist for a woman, actually, ironically enough. But as men, men's sexuality often gets shamed as objectifying, and you're not supposed to find women attractive. Another video I had watched today, prepping for this rant, I'll link it in the description as well. I think it's a little interesting. This guy talked about how one of the reasons people actually use porn, the men actually use porn, is because they feel desired, sexually by a woman. When the porn actress is just like, oh, I appreciate you as a man, all this kind of shit, like talking about how handsome they are. Oh my god, just ooh ooh. They actually feel like they have a sexual experience that they can't have with women in real life, even if they're married. Like there's situations, dead bedrooms, the woman just withholds sex and stuff like that. Doesn't like the man is not seen, sexually as sexually desirable. And look, I'm not trying to start shit with the ladies here, but the amount of times I've heard, I don't even think penises are attractive. I think penises are gross from women. The amount of times I hear women describe penises as gross is kind of eye-opening in that regard. Like, seems like, is that why Fuda is like such a big thing? Like with men, it just seems like more men out there find penises unironically attractive than women do, which is a little oof. Oh man, I don't know what to make out of that one, Chief. But yeah, it gives people this outlet for their sexuality that they might not have if they don't have girlfriends and stuff like that, and it gives them this outlet to feign intimacy as well. And a lot of these things do have negative effects, and that'll be the last de facto thing I'll talk about as well. Some of the negative effects of gooning and why you should stop gooning as much, because I don't necessarily think gooning is this totally healthy thing you should do, because let's just keep it honest, right? Let's be honest with ourselves. It helps fight prostate cancer. Oh, I play video games and it increases my hand-eye coordination. You're not using your hand-eye coordination for jack shit, Tubby. Just like any gooner who's like gooning however many hours a day is not using that shit. So you're not doing it to fight prostate cancer. That might be something that happens. Maybe you have a bigger dick from stroking it more, but that's not why you're doing it. Let's keep it, but that's not the reason. So the problem with constant coping, the problem with constant dopamine spiking, problem with coping in general, yeah, there is true. I would say that there's some truth to the whole keeping you docile thing. A lot of things in society are designed to keep you, fat and happy, as they continue to create a system that you aren't guaranteed to have wife or kids, and you're expected to work for nothing while these corporations make tons of money off of your continued wage slavery. And they give you porn and video games and TV shows and shit to placate you and keep you docile while you continue this process of not having a real life. Because at the end of the day, what is porn? It's a replica of something that people used to be easily attainable in real life, until, as Gerby put it, it became a Herculean feat. A Herculean feat to get a wife and kids. It's a Herculean feat now for men to actually launch off the ground, not be at home and stay at home with their parents to their fucking 30s and shit, and actually start a family. So we go to these copes, video games to give us a false sense of achievement, and pornography to give us a false sense of intimacy. Oh my god. Yeah, I definitely reached my limit. I need to actually blow my nose. Holy shit. If you will allow me 10 seconds to blow my nose, I get this last couple of sentences out. Holy shit. Oh, Jesus Christ. Yeah, my apologies, but hey, that's how you know the videos are real, right? This is a real dude talking to you about some real shit. So fucking real that he blows his nose into the mic. Awesome, awesome. But yeah, it's a substitute for things that we could have easily had back in the day with very little effort. So that's what I think is actually happening. That's why people form these so-called addictions, is that they don't have more productive things to do with their time, and they don't have healthier ways to express this type of shit. So they get involved in the constant coping, and when you get numb to the situation that you're in, like you're far less likely to see your situation as problematic the way that it is. Like, I mean, okay, maybe you don't want to have a relationship or whatever, and you're in your 30s and you're okay with dying alone. It's whatever. But if you actually do want to meet someone and start a family, you're a lot less likely to even attempt that if you have your sexual needs met by these artificial means, but they don't actually solve the problem. That you're not gonna feel as nearly as fulfilled as if you had actually gotten out there and met someone, if that's actually what you want to do. The video games are just a compensate. Oh, we were born to be warriors. I'm 412 pounds, but I'm like the descendant of warriors somehow. Yeah, and you play video games, you play shooters, buddy hopping in shooters and some shit to simulate something that your great grandfather actually got to do, but you don't get to do it. So that's why you are on here online coping on Discord and shit, because you don't actually get to enjoy the real thing. So it's a substitute for having a real life. It's a synthetic experience. You could argue that anybody caught up in this pattern of coping with these synthetic coping mechanisms, or some type of a synthetic man. If you're not a real person, you don't actually get to have a real life. You don't actually get to go outside, be part of a community, leave your footprint on the world, so to speak. Have your kids and stuff, and actually be a part of the world. You're just stuck inside, coping all day. Maybe you might find some innocent woman to bamboozle with your Nazi propaganda and trap her in the house with you while you do a 9-to-5 job, and just keep her in the house as a slave, brainwashing her and expecting her to not wake up to the reality of the situation that she's in. You could also try to do that, I suppose. But yeah, like, that's ultimately what's happening. People have been isolated, hyper-stimulated on their phones, all that other kind of shit. Let's not even get started with the dating apps and lookism and all that kind of stuff and all that. That's a huge can of worms. So of course people are using porn and shit to cope. It just comes off as incredibly weird to argue that this isn't a cope and that it's a addiction, quote unquote. You would be addicted to it if it didn't give you any kind of high. And I feel like the reason why it gives you a high, because that's another thing too. Gooning, it has, oh yeah, what was it? It gives it, your brain has like the same reaction as it does to like a shot of heroin or crack or some shit. This is a little disingenuous, to be honest, because has it ever occurred to you that your brain is actually supposed to have dopamine spikes like that from Gooning? That you're actually supposed to do that? That's actually supposed to be like, that's your body rewarding you. It's your reward circuit, telling you, hey, you had sex, good job, because you're supposed to want to have sex. These drugs that simulate, this feeling in the brain, the reason why they're so bad for you is because they have all these negative side effects that coincide with the fact that they simulate, dopamine responses that you're supposed to get through healthier means. the dopamine response isn't itself isn't the actual problem. There are chemical reaction that happens in the brain that's similar when you ingest pornography. That's not really the point. The point is when you ingest pornography, for example, and you're not forming real relationships or whatever, your quote unquote gooning addiction, you're just, sitting on your ass all day gooning or whatever. Presumably, I don't know how you could get addicted to some of this disgusting shit that's on the internet. But maybe I'll do a part 2 if I can, specifically about that, about gooning habits or something. I most likely will not, because I don't think anyone's actually going to challenge anything I say in this video to prompt me to actually do that. But yeah. So if you're doing something that encourages all these negative habits that have negative side effects, gaming all day results in prolonged sitting, and sitting has negative effects on your health, then yeah, those things are all bad. But the dopamine hit in of itself isn't what's actually bad, right? When you take heroin, it's the fact that it's addictive, actually addictive, and causes like bodily itching and dry mouth and all these other negative physical side effects for you having withdrawals to these drugs, and how it affects your health. Like that's what makes it bad, not the dopamine spike in of itself. You're supposed to get dopamine hits from more positive, healthy means, like exercise and passionate sex with a woman that you actually know and love and intend to have children with. That's what you're supposed to be doing. But all these copes that simulate that experience, that give you that same, reward circuitry, and it sets it off in your brain. Like, oh my God, you did a good job having sex today, but you didn't actually have sex. You didn't actually do anything. Or God forbid, you're doing something that has a negative effect on your health. That's what's actually bad. That's the thing that's actually bad about doing it. So if you were to ever make an argument for why you should goon less, it's so that you can focus on, what's important in life, get your shit together, and not get caught into a constant spiral of coping. I think I'll talk about more about that when I do a video about gaming and coping, because that's a little more generalized, and I think I've more or less said my piece on the whole gooning thing. I'm not really convinced that it's an addiction in the traditional sense that it really can be compared to a shot of heroin. I'm not seeing any evidence that actually is leading towards that. The people that I hear talk about gooning addiction and stuff, semen retention, they sound crazy. They say it in the most goofy way imaginable. There's this one video too of somebody talking about it, and I was gonna play it, but maybe I'll just link it in the description instead, and you just watch it and come with your own opinion. But he was talking about semen retention in such a weird way. It's like, we have to retain our seed and all this other weird shit. This idea that, you lose testosterone when you cum. Again, that there's studies have shown that this might not actually be true. But they'll make it sound like the testosterone comes from your sperm. And it's like, your testicles make the sperm, right? What was it, the libid cells or whatever? There's the specific cells in your testicles that are responsible for secreting testosterone. And I don't think any of that testosterone, I don't think any of it is actually in your sperm. Like when you release sperm and what was the seminal, I think this is called seminal fluid or whatever, the stuff that the sperm goes into. Your testosterone doesn't actually leave your body. I don't think it actually leaves your body, dude. Oh man, it's very strange. It's very strange. Maybe one day someone will make a non-conspiratorial, logical explanation for why you shouldn't be looking at pornography, and try to explain all this sex trafficking shit in a way that makes some semblance of sense. But overall, I would just say, don't fall into the habit of substituting real experiences with synthetic shit unless if you really have no interest in it. And you might want to ask yourself, double check that, because some people say, I'm not interested in a relationship. You might just be saying that because you're too comfortable with the type of situations you are in. But it depends from person to person. I'm not seeing a good reason to ban it if you're not gonna fucking ban video games and shit. You know, if you're not willing to fucking ban games, oh, video games, you're trying to say video games are just as bad as porn. Video games don't, decrease your testosterone. Video games don't do that. It's like, video games don't need to be as bad as pornography for you to acknowledge that video games are fucking bad. But I'll talk about more of that when I do the video game episode. So, yeah, I want to say that's kind of it. Don't allow your life to become a Blade Runner, like that's the only thing you should really be worried about. Oh, you look lonely? I can fix that. Yeah, don't let that be you. Just but this obsession with gooning bad, never goon. Look, dude, if you were serious about getting men specifically, because this is mainly aimed at men, but there's women too that have had similar experiences. You would fix the issue that leads to people gooning in the first place, which is a lack of human connection, just coping. You wouldn't allow a system that requires coping to deal with. One of the last stories my friend told me before she got taken to the shadow realm was about similar types of things about like porn addiction and stuff. We talked about it, and I told her, it's like, hey, the person that you're talking about who had this gooning addiction problem or whatever, they were like 17, lonely, felt unloved by the opposite sex, all that other kind of stuff. Like, maybe the reason that person started looking at like porn games and shit was because of that. I mean, that's basically what you told me. They did it because they didn't have someone that they could be intimate with. So if you know from personal experience that porn addiction doesn't work, like oh Jews exposed me to pornography and now I jerk off to animals. Like, if you know for a fact that that's not how it happens, why would you believe some 400-pound fat ass that tells you something that is does not match with observable reality from your own personal experience? Why would you believe that? Interesting. All right, well, I'm pretty sure this is like the worst video yet, especially since my nose got clogged up and shit. But hopefully this ignite some people. Maybe this will get some feedback, because I know the porn thing is a huge hot button issue for so many people. It makes people so angry. Oh my god! And I will be putting those videos or those links and stuff in the description as well. I think you'll find it very interesting. Take responsibility for your own actions. It's not always a Jew. You might actually just be a fat, lonely loser. That might actually be the problem. Alright. And with that, I think I'll see you guys in the next one.